players as you entered in some sort of ID to the dealer?
Good hand.
And we're back. We're back for day 2 of this Borgata Almighty Stack. Winter Poker Open. I don't remember. It had to be winter, right? Winter Poker Open. It's from January. I know we're behind, but somebody yelled at me for doing something from December and March. Now we're doing January and April, but we're going to get to February and April also, so no worries. We're catching up. We are actually catching up. So if that gets you into an uproar, don't worry about it. We're going to go over some hands now to make up for it. We're on day 2 here. As you guys remember, we managed to bag a pretty decent stack. Something in the neighborhood of like 60 big blinds during the last level. We probably bagged around 60 big blinds since we won the last hand, and then blinds went up. But basically, we come in with a pretty decent stack, chip up a little bit here and there, and then we just get cooking here. We got 874k at the 6k, 12k, 12k level. Cut off limps off of a stack of 1.1 million. Small blind completes, and I'm in the big blind with ace king, and I make it 55k. I think you could probably argue for making it a little bit bigger. It's fine, seems reasonable. Cut off calls, and we go heads up to a flop of 7-6-6. I bet 80k, and the cutoff calls. The turn is a 10 of spades, and I just don't really feel like this is a great card to continue on. The most likely draw is a flush draw, and some of those improve to a pair. 8-9 is like the second most likely draw, and that improves to a straight. A lot of his hands here are going to be hands with a 6 in them, I think, when he limp calls preflop, as opposed to if he had raise called. He'd be a little bit more weighted to things like pocket 8s and 9s, which we probably have a better chance of getting him off of, at least across multiple streets. So in this instance, I just decided to give up without really a whole lot of equity other than my overcards. I check. He bets 150k, kind of just confirming what I'm expecting to have happen here, and I just give it up. Next hand, we have 730k and open ace queen to 40k under the gun. Under the gun plus 1 jams for 160k, and it folds to me. We have a pretty easy call here with these stack sizes, and he has queen jack of hearts, so we're in pretty good shape. The board keeps it that way here with an ace 10-10 start. 6 of hearts on the turn adds some sweat here, but the 10 of clubs on the river is not good enough for him to get there. We win and stack that player now with 950k in our stack. In this next hand, early position makes it 50k off of an 800k stack. I call in the big blind with 7-6 of spades. The flop comes pretty good for us. It's 8-7-6, but there's a diamond draw on board. I check, and maybe not too surprisingly, he checks it back. This does make sense since this board is going to hit me a lot better than it's going to hit him and his early position opening range, but still kind of disappointing when we have bottom 2 and he just takes the free card. The turn is also kind of a bad card. It's the 4 of clubs, which brings in some kind of weird straights that he probably shouldn't have, but I could have. So it might kill some of my action. But I do decide to bet 60k, and he calls. The river's a 4 hearts. I check, and he goes for a bet of 215k, which I thought was kind of weird. It's a weird spot because really competent players may play overpairs like this, but his sizing on the river certainly feels polarizing. I don't really know if people are frequently going to this size with any of their like weaker hands. So even though my 2 pair is like sort of counterfeit here, I felt like I was pretty much beating everything except flopped straights or like something weird like that, that just played it kind of slow and funky. So not really being able to put him on a lot of hands that make sense, but also feeling like I win a lot of the time. I do decide to make the call, and I beat a weirdly played queen 10 offsuit. So he did have a gutter on the flop. I kind of understand his call on the turn and his river bet, but I wasn't really putting him consciously on a lot of like 9x or 10x when I made the call. I just kind of couldn't piece it together and couldn't find the fold button. So we get a pretty big chip up there, and somebody famous joins us at the table. It's Maurice Hawkins. Some of you may remember Maurice from a deep run I made in the marathon, I believe in 2017, where he told me to quit poker after I called him with ace high on the river. So that was fun. Okay, Where were we? Oh yeah, Maurice Hawkins at the table, joining us, gracing us with his presence. The blind level is now 12K, 25K with a 25K big blind ante. We've got 1.1 million in our stack. Woohoo! Joining the Millionaires Club. I don't know. There's an early position limp, and Maurice makes it 60K in middle position. I flat in MP2 with Queen Jack of Spades. The limper, who happens to limp a lot, makes the call, not surprising to anybody. The flop comes Ace King 8 with 2 spades, so we actually don't flop 80% of a royal draw, but kind of the next best thing. Checks to me, and I decide that I want to start betting now to represent some of the stronger hands I could have pre-flop, as well as potentially being able to barrel off. So I bet 130K and only early position calls. So when he does call after limp calling pre-flop, he's pretty capped to mostly one pair hands, some strong draws and some weaker draws as well, like gut shots. I do expect I'm probably going to be able to get him off that range a lot by the river, but it's going to be very board dependent, so kind of praying for bricks or for our draw to come in. The turn is a deuce of clubs, so it puts a second flush draw on board, and when he checks, I continue telling the story, and I bet 240K. He calls again, and the river is a queen of clubs, which actually brings in the backdoor flush draw, gives us third pair, but almost never the best hand, unless he had a misdraw that we were already ahead of anyway. When he checks, I think it's kind of close. Like, we definitely beat some hands, so it's reasonable to check back here. But I also think that we're going to win the pot just, like, so often by jamming. He really only ever has Jack 10 when it's specifically in clubs. He can't have Jack 10 of spades because we block that. He can't have really anything else that improves on this river unless it's specifically King Queen, and I think that's like possible that he leads that himself. We also block that, so what we're really looking at is just a couple of combos we lose to that can definitely call, and then a lot of like single ace-x hands, which I'm pretty sure we can get him off of. So when he checks, I go for the shove. I don't do this move a lot, but I think this is a pretty slam dunk spot for it. He tanks for a really long time, but ultimately folds. The table speculates about what I had, Maurice included, saying that I definitely had at least ace queen. Sorry, Maurice. So now we're up to 1.6 million. MP, who's new to the table, makes it 115K, and the hijack calls. I'm in the small blind with red pocket jacks, and I bump it up to 350K. Pretty mandatory 3-bet here. Middle position, calls all in for just 300K, so that, you know, makes it a little easier. Hijack folds, and MP has king 10 of hearts. Kind of weird raise calling off spot. I guess he just didn't want to open jam, but he knew he was going with it. Very, very weird situation, but he's got the king 10 of hearts, and the board runs out king 7-4, 10-4. So can't get her done with the pocket jacks, and just move on to the next hand here. Blinds are now 15K, 30K with a 30K big blind ante, which means every round we're just about paying one starting stack. Pretty crazy. 1.4 mil in the stack, and the guy from the king 10 of hearts hand previously opens to 125K with 600K in his stack. I call in the big blind with ace 4 of hearts, and when the flop comes down ace queen 5, I check call his bet of 125K. The turn is a beautiful 4 of diamonds, gives us 2 pair, and when I check, he unfortunately checks it back, but on the river 8, I decide to do a kind of weird line here and just check to let him bluff. I guess I was thinking at the time that he didn't really have a lot of value hands here that could call a bet, and most of the time he might bluff again, I guess. I don't know. I'm not really sure what I was thinking, honestly, but we do get him to bluff off with the king 6 of hearts. We check call at 235K bets and get to take down a pretty good one. So a little bit of payback here. At the 20K, 40K, 40K level, we've got 1.8 million and open king jack of clubs under the gun to 90K. Maurice is in the big blind and makes the call with 2.5 mil in his stack. Flop comes down king 10 deuce with 2 diamonds, and he check calls 100K. The turn is the 10 of diamonds, which is maybe the worst card in the deck. Brings every second pair in and brings in every flush. There are still a lot of draws available though, so I decide to call the 150k or the 180k bet that he makes. The price is also not bad, so seems reasonable. The river is a jack of diamonds, which is now the 4th diamond on board, and when he bets 540k, even though we've improved it to pair, our absolute hand strength has improved. Our relative hand strength has really gone down, because if he has, say, queen jack with just a diamond, which he very easily could, if he has jack 9, ace queen, ace jack, ace 9 with a diamond, any of these hands that he could reasonably float the flop with, and then start leading on the turn as a bluff, basically all of them come in. The only things that really don't are specifically queen jack with no diamond, and he has to turn that into a bluff now, where he might think it has some showdown value. So I do ultimately decide to fold, much as it pains me. If it's paining me this much, maybe I should just quit poker. The blinds are now 30k, 60k with a 60k big blind ante, and I have 1.8 million in my stack. I open with pocket kings under the gun. Someone calls with $1 million in his stack. The flop comes ace, ace, 8, and I decide to check call 100k. The turn is the 7 of clubs. I check and he bets 200k, and I call once again. Kind of hating it. I could probably just fold the turn at this point, but I just kind of got a little bit married to the hand at this point and make what is probably a bad call. The river is the 9 of spades, and I check and he now bets 300k. I'm now 100% convinced he always has it. It's never a bluff. It's usually a boat based on his sizing and his increasing by only 100k each street. He never shows me, but I feel pretty good about this one on the river, if not on the turn play. In this next hand, we have 1.4 million, and the cutoff, who's an active player, makes it 140k. I call in the big blind with 10-7 of spades, and the flop comes down ace 6-5 with 1 spade. I check, and he decides to check it back, which is a little bit confusing because it's such a good board texture for the preflop raiser's range. But when the turn comes to ace of hearts, I decide I can start bluffing now, and I sometimes have a couple of outs against his range. I bet 110k, and he makes the call. The river's the jack of spades, and I kind of figured that because the turn brings a backdoor flush draw, there's a lot of missed draws that I can get him off of with a pretty reasonable bet. I actually don't think I need to bet as big as I did. I think if anything, my sizing is a pretty large mistake, but in the moment, I wanted to get him off of kings and queens as well as all the missed flush draws. So I go for a sizing of 350k, and he calls with jack 10 of hearts. So the fact that he can sometimes improve to second pair here with his flush draws definitely puts a little bit of a damper on the bet. I don't know if I'm convinced that we need to go for it here, but you know, things kind of weren't going my way. I was kind of looking for the win here, and just didn't work out this time. Curious what you guys think about this hand, though. Leave me a comment down below. Let me know what you specifically thought about that hand. I'm kind of curious what the audience, what you guys really think in general about that spot. Anyway, in this next blind level, 40, 80, 80, we get a bunch of jams and 3-bet jams through, but we still end up chipping down to 1.25 million. People have been folding a lot, so I decided to take a very thin jam on the button for a fair number of big blinds with king 8 of hearts. It's not super outside of Nash equilibrium, but it's just a spot where, like, if we get called, even if we win, like, our credibility is kind of ruined. So I don't really hate just folding it, but I also don't hate shoving it. Unfortunately, the big blind just ends up waking up with queens, and even though we have a decent amount of equity and you know, with one overcard, we just can't actualize it. Board comes out 4-4-3 deuce 6. Never really a draw in play. We needed the ocean to come out to maybe hit a flush or something like that, but we end up in the money. We do cash, although it feels like a min cash in this thing. Every single time that, you know, you go deep in something like this, you know, cashing is always great, but getting it to like the top, you know, couple percent of the field and then only getting like 3 buy-ins back is sort of brutal, especially when a lot of people end up firing 2 or 3 bullets into these things. Personally, I only fired 1, so I felt pretty good about the cash of 1497 in 137th place. But, you know, obviously I would have loved to go deeper. You guys need to stay tuned because deeper runs are coming. You guys know that they're coming. It's a bit of a spoiler for some of them, but you guys have already seen on social media that we've had some success lately, and it's going to be documented here, just not yet. Make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of that, and turn on bell notifications so you see when I go live with new videos. Take care. Share this video with a friend. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.